I'm joined today by Chris. He's a good friend of mine. He's achieved many different things. I've been a CMO, now helping companies with all different types of marketing, more specific around content. We're going to dive into a load of good questions. I wish we recorded numerous conversations we had before, just on phone calls, because I think they'd be incredibly useful. But we're going to dive straight in. So Chris, what do you think brands get wrong about content and marketing their content?
Do you know what? It's kind of hard to talk about this without sounding like you're really putting the boot in to 95+% of brands. I guess first of all, I think we should talk about content, right? Content spans a whole spectrum of what companies do. So a lot of people look at content and think, oh, it's just social media content, or it's just blog content, and I think where brands go wrong is actually there's all of that is content, and some of it gets more focus than others. And even the places that get focus, I think a lot of brands play it too safe. And I don't know if it's a fear thing. I don't know if it's a perception of what their brand thing is, or just a lack of knowledge of what's going on in the world. But I think it's often just a little bit too vanilla and doesn't do anything, right? I almost wonder what the point is of some content that brands put out. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that where there used to be this real fear of branded content and putting content out under a brand, we kind of shifted, right? We went from not really putting much out, and then it was a big bang reveal on an advert, to social, where you could have basically put anything out at any point at any time.
Yeah.
And you could have put anyone in control of it, and it could have blown up or gone really well, or blown up in your face and gone tremendously badly, to this part we're in now where it just feels like everyone's a little bit confused of what to do, why to do it, how to do it, and where they naturally fit. And I think this is where people like you can really help steer brands in the right direction, or have a real, crystal clear vision of what they should do, why they should do it, how they should do it. And rather than being like overly policed, like a lot of bigger brands are, actually being able to do tests, learn, iterate, understand their audience a little bit more, and don't talk at people anymore, talk with them.
Well, that's the funny thing. I think because everyone is doing very similar styles, the potential to stand out is huge, and you don't even have to change things that dramatically to do so.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite, if we're going to pigeonhole this in the kind of social media world for 2 minutes, Paddy Power are by far one of my favorite content creators, right? They work in an industry that is very highly regulated, frowned upon, a bit borderline with how they sit in the world in gambling. And I'm not advocating gambling, obviously. I don't really gamble myself, but I admire how they go about it, because in that world where they face those challenges, some of the content they put out is the funniest. It's the most... It's they're very quick to respond to trends, to news, to things that are going on in the sporting world. The sporting world provides hundreds of topics to talk about every week, and they get on it quickly. And they also, their target audience, and again, it's a bit of a generous thing, but they play into it so well. And what they're doing is not high value. It's not, some of it is, I guess they're outrageous stunts, but excuse me, in the world, in some of the social media stuff, it's just, you can tell they've obviously, it must be such fun to work in that team. As a man who loves sport, what dream gig that must be for some of them. And I remember seeing their CMO in a conference a few years ago, and someone asked him the question, it's like, how far are they allowed to push their stuff? And he was very open. He said that they can go as close to the line as they possibly can. How many CMOs? Hundreds of CMOs, right? As I know quite a few as well. I can't imagine many saying that to their marketing team. I'm sure you've probably seen it like I have. You work in teams and you come up with a concept of something. And this isn't just social, for the record. This could be any piece of content. You come up with a concept. You think, what a great idea. It's emotive. It's outlandish. It's going to hook people in. It's great. And then it goes to head of brand and they're like, oh, no, we'll water that down a little bit. And then it goes to head of legal and no, we'll water it down a little bit more. And then the CMO gets this, oh, no, we'll water that down just a little bit more. And then before you know it, you're 3 weeks in, your idea is just a shadow of its former self and it goes out. And
this is where people have forgotten what they're doing, why they're doing it. And actually, are they looking for, what moment are they looking for? And is it, very often it's the quality versus quantity debate often.
Yep.
It's, are we hitting like a goal and an OKR, or actually are we trying to resonate with our users, or are we trying to create a little bit of a moment for ourselves? Or a lot of the time I think it's lost on the goal setting. And then, as you said, like the brand police element of it just sort of takes it away. I've seen some things on, TikTok and Instagram Reels, which kind of make my skin crawl a little bit, as in, they're so close to the line, or they've just jumped so far ahead.
Yep.
And then if you flip it back, actually what people do want is that relatability, that moment with brands and with content. There is this such shift in swings that's happening at the moment.
I think you raise an interesting point about goal setting. And I think a lot of brands where I've worked in the past and where I'm speaking to currently as a consultant, I think a lot of brands set the goals of what they're trying to achieve with their content totally wrong. And the problem with that goal setting, a lot of brands, I think, like, oh, what's the ROI? How many sales are we going to get? And then what invariably seems to happen is they'll go out with a 3 months half-assed strategy. I was like, well, we won't even talk about attribution, but they go, well, we can't get the sales in, or we haven't got the follower jump, or we haven't got this, we haven't got that, and we'll just can it. Whereas, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't drive sales, but that shapes what the type of content they put out is. And they basically, you said it earlier about talking to, as opposed to talking with your audience and your community, they're putting out content that's trying to sell to you, and essentially an advert. I mean, Christ, how many adverts do we see? And I'm not even talking about social content. I'm talking about actual adverts. Every day you open, I went on, someone was telling me about his new pillow, and I went on Instagram and I instantly saw this advert for this new pillow, this fancy, look like a spaceship type thing. And I'm not kidding you, Danny. I saw 10 adverts for that same pillow from different brands within, 2 minutes of scrolling. We see enough adverts. I think where brands should be going from is not creating adverts. They should be creating content that makes people think, that keeps your brand top of mind, that you're almost entertaining or informing, as opposed to, and you can do that, even if you're informing, right, you can do that in an entertaining way. And I think so many brands lose track of that. Something you and I have talked about a lot is how individual content creators create content, and the huge gulf in the way these people build their personal brands or create videos or whatever. That gulf between how they do it and how brands do it. Yet you've got these content creators who are building audiences of, I mean, it's a cliche example, right? Mr. Beast, everyone talks about Mr. Beast, but even lower tier creators are generating hundreds of thousands of views per videos, or getting subscriber counts. And it stuns me that more brands aren't looking at these individual creators and going, like, how are they approaching that? Why are they doing that? Because something's obviously working there, right? But brands, I think, are getting too stuck in their own heads.
It's like a true misunderstanding of what people actually want when they're consuming branded content.
Yeah.
And the best content is either like inspiration or aspiration,
but
it's how they connect. It's how you connect with that content. So whether it's with an individual, a mascot, with like a product type, which can lead to social status or, some sort of other sort of status with it.
Yeah.
But I do think when these, content creators, like these professionals that do it, have really they've just thought about how it's going to connect. Like the first thought isn't sell stuff. It's how's this going to tell a story that will connect. And it's fine on TV because that's what people are used to. But even on radio, you have to do something different. You have to like sell something, use emotive sounds or a story to connect. And I think we've been engineered a little bit by social networks, and they've kind of pushed us down this, let's just create loads of content,
Yeah.
loads and loads of content, and then push it out, and you need to do more because that's what the algorithm needs, and it feeds off the content. For me, that just, it emphasizes where brands have been lost a little bit, and they've kind of been engineered by the platforms, as opposed to engineering the content so people actually want to consume it. And we've talked around this before, but I think there should be a rule. If you're not going to pay for it and want to do paid, but put paid behind it, is it good enough to put out there?
Well, let me interrupt you there, right? So this touches on what I think is one of the biggest myths around social media, and it's the death of organic reach. Yes, organic reach has been slammed across many platforms. However, there are many creators out there who are not suffering with rubbish organic reach. And it begs the question, why? My answer to anyone who asks that is because they're creating content that people want to watch and people enjoy watching, and people want to share WhatsApp to their mates or DM to their mates. And I think so many brands are hiding behind this organic reach is getting smashed. And it isn't what it was 10 years ago. No one's disputing that. But if you can create good content, it's in the interests of these platforms to put it in front of people who will engage with it. And I had this conversation with someone last week. They were, oh yeah, well, there's no point doing social because organic reach is dead. I was like, no, you're just creating crap content. Like, your expectations, I can't name who they are, but I was pitching to a client a little while ago, and they were saying they had in particular on Instagram was one of the channels we were talking about. They had 100,000 followers, which they had built up legitimately, organically over the last 5 years. And they're like, oh, well, we get 20 likes on each post we put out. So we're just thinking, like, what's the point? But you look at the content they're putting out, and it is just awful. There's just nothing to it. And what amazes me, Danny, is I think, how can I not? I don't know how people can't see it sometimes. I don't know if they're too close to it, maybe, or they get in, they're sitting in their team meetings and someone comes up with this idea and they just lose track a bit. I don't know why. I suspect there's different reasons for different teams, but it's a roundabout way of saying organic reach is not as bad as people think it is.
Yeah, I think if people are worried around creating content and worried around engagement rates, you've got to look at the wider industry and wider spectrum.
Yeah.
Engagement has dropped because more and more people are creating content. It's far easier to create content now, and it's far easier for them to understand what your content is. So as you said, the For You page or serving you content and entertainment, they're going to constantly be doing that. And actually, when you show intent on something, it's going to show you some more and some more until you decide your engagement rates, say that you like it or you don't like it. If you've got an Instagram account and you're posting on it, people don't like as much anymore because there's stories.
Yep.
So, and some people live doing this and scrolling, right to left and just constantly downloading that and consuming that. And we'll get into whether it's, useful content, or is it like worthwhile content or useless content up there. And then other people are so engineered to go top to bottom, keep scrolling to see that. So if you're expecting to get, brand dopamine kicks from engagement, I actually think you're probably not understanding how platforms are working, how they want to take on content and then post it in front of your non-engaged audience.
I think as well, though, I think you're right. And to add to it, I would say that I think a lot of brands have this weird perception of how seriously they take themselves, or how, and I've seen it in companies, I'm sure you have as well. Like they're like, oh no, well, we're too highbrow, we're too serious for that. And I think that it stifles a lot of brands, stifles a lot of teams. And that's a cultural shift, I think, in a lot of companies. And that's not even taking into account how some, especially founder-led companies, there's even worse, right? You've got the founder who basically dictates what the messaging is. But the positive spin on all that is, I think, if you get someone in who's prepared to sit down and ideate and create. I mean, strategies don't even have to be that complicated, right? I worked with a company last year, and they were creating stuff on an iPhone in the office, and they're getting hundreds of thousands of views. And I think that the beauty of it is yes, you're right. There's so many people creating content, but there's also, I don't think it takes a lot to break into that next level where actually you really start getting some views because you're creating something that's a little bit different and a little bit interesting.
Completely. Something you said that sort of screamed out for me to like jump in, but it's the guardrails. I think for rather than having really, really strict guidelines, have guardrails so people know where success is and they're on the way to success, but let them bump into it from time to time and let them create it and let people feel when they're on the right path or not, because I've got a bee in my bonnet about brand guidelines and people over investing and wasting their time and spending a long, long time in saying what you can do and what you can't do.
Yeah.
And there's this huge grey area in the middle. And what happens is they just bump them into you can't do it if they're unsure. And I think all that does is drives people to create bland content or create content that people don't really want to consume, and even your biggest super fans don't understand it and don't get it. And everyone loves the Duolingo example of what they did on TikTok, but that took years of understanding what it is, years of actually saying and being flagged up to the CEO, and he said it in many podcasts that's what happens.
Yeah.
But now they've got into it, so they know how weird they can be or how wild they can be, and even to the point of killing their mascot to generate enough interest and buzz and engagement around them. So I think there are ways and always examples of companies that do a great job and can give you confidence when you're recommending something different or a little bit out there that enables it. And I think that's something where many brands can bring someone external to give them the reset and the anchoring that they need.
I think the guardrails is a good analogy, and just, I know we've got a lot of questions, so I'll draw a line under this one. I think where the upsides and downsides here as well, right? So like, unless you're really creating content that is super offensive, it gets forgotten about tomorrow, right? It goes up into the For You page or the feed or wherever. It might go best bit of luck, it might go viral for 24 hours. But realistically, especially the short form content, right? I mean, you're not seeing it a week later. And I think people can stick within brand guidelines without upsetting genres or groups or whatever. And I think there's, so I think brands should be a bit braver. And I think that, you can have brand guidelines, but, what you want to do as well is like, you're trying to create a place where people aren't afraid to put out their creativity and ideas. We've all worked in places where you don't really get a say in anything, and it's not very rewarding. It's not very exciting. You want your team to come in the morning invigorated about something. Like, we all know these best ideas that we have happen in the shower or as we're dropping off at nighttime. Could you imagine you sort of walking into, you're lying there in bed one night and you have this great idea about this concept that you really want to introduce to your boss the next day. And then you're sitting on the bus, you're going into work, you're like, and you start watering it down in your own head because you think, he's never going to say yes to that, or she's never going to say yes to that, or blah, 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 blah. And I think that you want to foster an environment where people can come to you with these, I don't even want to say outrageous ideas because it makes it sound more extreme than it really is, but like, you want to have an open door with ideas, right? You might not agree to it straight away, but you don't want people to hold back thinking, there's no point me even raising that. So yes, long story short, too vanilla, needs to be braver.
Maybe it's like a spin on something we've spoken around before, but it might be a case of, do we think that the marketing leader or the growth leader has kind of become, are they letting the team, are they the problem basically?
We're going there already, are we?
Have they become a little bit too disjointed or disconnected? Or is it a case of having to be the steward
Okay,
of the
so
brand.
I remember a piece of advice I got years and years ago, and it stuck with me. And it was about something. It was along the lines of, don't let your own views extrapolate out to the way you address everyone. And it was in relation to a conversation I was having with like my boss at the time. I was like, oh well, what's the point in? I said, what's the point in doing this? No one's going to be interested in that. And he said, no, you're not interested in that. Doesn't mean nobody else is. And I was like, oh, right. And I think that a lot of senior business people probably look at the likes of TikTok and short form video content in a way that's not as serious as the huge numbers that watch it. There's a huge disconnect there, isn't there, really? I mean, you've talked about this before many times. And I think that comes back to what I was saying a minute ago. It's if you've got a younger team and they're going, oh, well, we've seen this trend about, I don't know, people throwing ice buckets on heads. Wouldn't it be great if we got the CEO to do it? And, you know, and you got this stuffy CEO in his suit. Oh, I'm not playing up to that, you know, that childish, blah, blah, blah. When the truth of the matter is that they showed that bit of personality and, you know, a bit of chat. I don't know. It's a bad example maybe, but I think a lot of senior leaders, particularly in marketing, maybe not quite as giving the short form video stuff as much credit as it. I mean, TikTok's a great example, right, about organic reach. Why wouldn't you? If you're and the audience is getting older there as well, right? It used to be just kids dancing, and if you and I had this conversation a couple of years ago, then yes, I'd probably say, oh, don't worry about it so much. But the landscape's changed, so I think that some people haven't really moved with the times, or maybe frown upon it, or don't think it's as important as it is. They're missing a trick.
My theory on short form is because a lot of it feels disposable. It can, to someone senior, when you're super busy and you're having to defend so many different metrics being down or performance not doing so well, or performance marketing, you know, CAC's gone through the roof.
Yeah.
Actually trying to like argue the case and be the thought leader or be the steward of marketing and or growth and bringing them forward and saying, no, this is an awareness play. No, this is, you know, this is actually middle of the funnel for us.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, we're using it as retention. It's like a retention play.
Yeah.
And where I think a lot of marketing leaders are getting lost a little bit is trying to actually understand how the web is now versus how the web used to be when they were coming up. And I think that I truly believe the web now is such a different place because there's three phases of the web. There's the public web, open web, which you can go and see a lot, and a lot of it's published there, but actually you see probably like 1%, you know, under 1% of the content. There's the semi-private web, which is gated, where you have to subscribe and you have to log in. And then it's actually a little bit more manageable and only a small subset of people will see it and most likely won't go anywhere after that. So it's kind of the world that people are comfortable in. And then there's this private world, which is your WhatsApp groups, your Telegrams, your DMs on Instagram, on TikTok, etc.
Yeah.
And because they can't see it and can't measure it, it's very difficult for them to view it as something that's important. I've got a theory that companies in the future will be creating content specifically for people to share in groups and to share with their audience completely private. So brands will never get to know that it's been shared.
I think we're already seeing that, right? I mean, I think you're spot on because it's a long-term approach. And in this world of ROI and short tenure for marketing professionals, I think a lot of them may be a bit afraid to go to the CEO and say, oh, look, I want to invest a couple of $100K in this social thing. but we're not really going to see any results until, I don't know, maybe like 6 months, a year down the line. And even then it's not guaranteed. And the CEO's like, oh, no, just stick it into PPC and we'll get that thing. Like, I mean, you brought up a great thing, Duolingo, right? How many brands would have had that Duolingo type conversation and just gone, no. And then several years later, you go on LinkedIn and every marketing professional in the world's got a view on what an ingenious idea Duo is. And it's true, right? Because most CMOs that you would go to is, oh, how about we introduce this character? Oh, no. Like, I don't know. What, 90% would say no, if not higher?
Easily higher, yeah.
Easily higher, right? And then a couple of years later, it's, oh, well, what a great idea. And I think, again, another thing we talked about is like tenure. It's a bold CMO or head of marketing or marketing director that goes to their CEO these days and says, look, a lot of us need to align for that to kind of take that bold idea and bring it to fruition, I think.
Should we play the other side of it? Should we try and help CMOs and CGOs and VPs of marketing? Do we have any recommendations so they could take this on board and say, hey, rather than it's all our fault, how do they go forward and help the team do better or do more?
I don't think it is their fault. I think it's a safe play. But I think in this day and age where, I mean, costs are going up for marketing, right? Whether it's hiring costs, they're going up. Whether it's CPMs, they're going up. Like, all of it's going up. So it gets to a point where you have to try and say to yourself, what are we going to do to protect things for the future? Can we build up our owned audience again? Can we do it in a way where we can talk to people who know us and people who don't know us? Can we build up this? And it comes back to content, right? I mean, we've talked a lot now about how social content, but it's more than just that. Like you said, the three aspects of it, right? Can we create content that actually is for our target audience and questions they might be asking about the services or products we offer? It doesn't always have to be a duo, right? You don't have to create a duo. It could just be better content, more relevant content, more engaging content. And I think the way to try and sell it into the CEOs is like, look, our marketing costs are here at the moment. But if we can start introducing this, we can maybe, it's a brave thing to say, but maybe we can reduce the dependency on paid acquisition. Can we get it to a point where people are sharing it? The word of mouth is always about buying products, but can we get it to where we're growing that audience? Can we grow the community? Like, everyone talks about community, right? It's like community is a buzzword, but no one really knows how to build it because they think that it's got to be in a CRM list or it's a Discord server or whatever. But you can build a community of Instagram followers, and you can create it in a way that actually people are chatting to each other on it. Or I think the braver brands will start having a bit more of a serious approach to this. Whether it's, and again, I know content's wide and we've talked about it, but from a social perspective, I think they will start looking at different ways of creating stuff.
The way that I explain it and bring it up through, consulting or coaching at the moment is you're going to be creating this huge amounts of volumes of content, and you're going to be creating quite a lot or curating quite a lot, and a lot of it will be locked in some box somewhere because you think it's a no or you think it's not going to see the light of day.
Yeah.
However, there are going to be proportions of people who already know you that might actually want to receive it. So when I say to people, what are you doing to think around distributing in different areas or different ways? You can create short form video, really quick short form video. That's just a little thank you.
Yeah.
And you can send that out and connect it, upload it directly into your CRM and send it out to your customers. Or you can
don't even get me started on CRM, man. I think we're going to come to that later in our chat, but the way brands approach CRM content blows my mind.
And this is, sorry to jump in, but this is where I think, the substacks of the world and that are being looked at in a completely different light versus CRM, because they're offering a different feel under a new banner, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of newsletters, and I've been guilty of it. You send newsletters out, I think it's a great idea from a brand perspective, and you get a response from your audience, and you're like, why the hell have you sent us this? Yep. And that, like, one person that's a bit sweary or a bit ranty in a reply to this email instantly puts you on the back foot. But actually what you can do, and what we can do with all these different tools now, is have different content and have different opinions and styles, and have them on the right platforms. Because I'm not one that loves going across loads more platforms because there's too many. But I do think we have to be really smart now in understanding the culture of apps and the culture of where you're putting your content, and then how people will engage with it, or maybe not, but how are they going to consume it, and are they going to be entertained, inspired, or is it going to be informative enough for them to want to take an action, or think, hey, I had no idea that they offered this, but when I do really need it, and it might be in the next 6 months, this is really going to stick in my mind. So for me, this is why these more modern platforms have really thought about becoming the canonical home for that style of content.
It's also like an ecosystem, right? You can use those other platforms to cross-pollinate with other platforms. So you can take the people who are Substack audience, and you can show them that actually, I also create content on TikTok. So if you want to, it's a little bit different maybe, or, if you want to follow me on TikTok, and then you want to just going back to the CRM thing, I can't say who it was, but someone I used to work with, they had a huge database they built up over years. And I'll never forget the CRM manager telling me this. But she was like, oh, Chris, do you know what the number one action is when we send out an email? I was like, oh, I don't know. Sales? I don't know. She went, no. The number one action is unsubscribe. I was like, what? And she said, yeah. I was like, how long has it been that way? She went, oh, about a year. I was like, what are you doing? Like, why you keep, how many times do you need to learn that that's the wrong, like, and that's not, I've heard that from other companies as well. It just stuns me, blows my mind. But is Substack, just being countering to your point, is Substack, it's just another platform, right? If you're still putting out vanilla content that's not great content, you're not going to grow there either. I agree with you. I think that there's people who should be approaching Substack and creating stuff there. But it's just, what I find crazy is, Danny, I look at a lot of brands, and we've talked about this many times. I'm an ideas person, right? You're an ideas person. We look at brands and we think, how are you not doing this, that, and the other? Why are you not doing a format about this? Why are you not introducing this approach? And none of these things are particularly complicated, right? We're not talking about hiring Hollywood directors and CGI or Pulitzer Prize winning writers. But so many brands I don't know I don't know how brands can get past that and just start creating, like, they should be on Substack. Maybe they could have their head of product, like, just doing a weekly diary about what they're working on this week, or people would be interested to see that stuff. But that's how you build community, right? That's how you build affinity. That's how you build that relationship with people. They're like, actually, like you said, especially in businesses that got long sales cycles, it is very hard to create content that is going to be always selling. B2B companies suffer with this all the time. And they struggle with it. So why are you not just creating content that's interesting, that people want to follow, like behind the scenes, what's gone on in the office this week? You can build that community of people, and distribution we sort of touched on earlier. On one hand, it's really tough at the moment, can be very expensive, but on the other hand, it's never really been easier to build a community of people you actually want to, who have the same interests, or have the, are exactly target customers or whatever, right? So distribution, while it might be tough and it might be expensive, in some industries, B2B in particular, where you've got long sales cycles, but you've got high average orders, you don't need 1 million people reading your Substack. You know, you might have 10 or 20 or 100, but actually could drive huge revenues at the end of it.
Something that you did in one of your previous clients is you really rethought the format of what you're sending out. So one of the things that you did was, you incorporated audio and it being like almost like a voice note. We talked around this a couple of years ago on one of your former pods, but actually leveraging like voice notes or like a long voice note, which is almost commonplace with people, and sending it to them. So there is this affinity to a voice and to a person. I think it was, super smart, and is going to be something that people should be thinking around doing. With AI tools now, you can do that. 11 Labs, you can knock that together in seconds and change it, or you could use
you
it.
can knock it together with AI quickly. You're right, but actually, when we were doing that, it didn't take that long. It genuinely didn't. It was a very low lift piece of content. We'd sit and talk about what messages we were trying to get out that week, and that was driven by what had gone on that week, right? And what it wasn't that overthought. And then it was literally voice recorded straight into CapCut, a few edits, and it was ready to go. But the feedback we got on that was huge. And you're right, people want to hear from people, and this comes back to what we were talking about, personal brand, and how people like why a CEO. Probably got to answer my own question here, but why aren't CEOs and senior leaders and stuff really just being a lot more communicative? I just don't know. I had it when I was CMO at Quidco, and I'm going to be very careful how I phrase everything here, but they changed the membership model, and it'd gone from quite a simple membership model to a little bit more complex. And it's like, right, people fear change, people think they're being ripped off, and it was because it had that layer of complexity, and it was quite hard to communicate to people. Anyway, long story short, the founder was like, nope, I want this, and it got done, and it went live, and unexpectedly loads of people complaining about it. However, at the time, as I said, we're getting killed on social media here. I said, we have to do something. So I did a live, and I basically said, right, I, as CMO, I'm going to go onto Facebook at whatever time, midday. And I said, if you've got any problems with it, I said, come talk. I will talk to you through it. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, you can't do that. You can't. I said, why not? And everyone was very fearful. It's come back to this brand Guardrails thing, right? Everyone's very fearful about it. Anyway, fast forward a couple of hours, all these people came on. We're having great chats, and it's probably still on there somewhere. And loads of people were coming up, and they were moaning, and I'd explain to them, why they were wrong or what they'd misunderstood. And it was transformed the viewpoint and the trend on social of everyone moaning about it, to the point where people would moan about it, and then someone else, like a customer, would come on and go, oh, no, check out this guy Chris who works there, check out what he said on Facebook. And now, weirdly, I had a message about it. I mean, this was 5 years ago or something, and I had a message about it the other day. Someone from still at Quidco was like, oh, your name just came up in conversation talking about it.
But I think that's the power of becoming and enabling your company to have personas, or having people who are brave enough to get in front of a camera, or in front of a mic, or be it. There's a couple of similar stories. I worked with an international takeaway company, and they used to have someone who used to send, and it used to come from their name, and they wanted to transition away from it. They had, I think it was over 11,000 replies to the emails when they said that she was leaving. 11,000 emails. And that just proved how important that this person who would land in your inbox became to people. They really bought into it. It was this huge thing. And I don't think the brand were nowhere near ready for that. But it just proves that if you're brave enough and you want people to connect, if you're landing in your inbox, or, you're the live feed in someone's life, they're going to connect to you. And over the last couple of weeks, the Shopify CEO, Toby, and the Box CEO last night, Aaron Levy, they both were saying they're an AI first company. So they've just gone AI first. And rather than it leaking, they've published the internal email onto social media. Yeah. So in the US, and they would call it Go Direct now. So rather than it being leaked and going into big publications, they're going direct. They owned it. But what I would say is if they really wanted to, they could go that step further and record a really quick video.
Yeah.
And talk it through and add an additional human layer to it.
Yeah.
And that would have leaked as well. But it also put all these people off edge and saying, hey, AI isn't the overlord and it's not going to remove me, but actually there is some logic, there's some human element to it.
Yeah.
And actually that's going to resonate with customers when they see it. I'm one of these people that says you should, as much as possible, you should try and own distribution as much as possible. You should understand that you're a newsroom and what you're creating internally will most of the time probably become external content. Yeah. And if someone does decide to leak it, it's no different than someone being copied into an email by accident, which happens all the time. So actually, if you can own it, add the personal touch onto it and talk to people, not at people, and talk with them. Yeah. It gives you this brand longevity. And in this performance first world that we operate in, it's very difficult. The CMO cycle, for instance, is really difficult. You've got the brand CMO that's there for a long time. Yeah. They're then removed, and then they bring someone probably from more of a performance background, a more modern style marketeer. They're there for 12 months, and then they wonder why things have nosedived. And then it's circular again because then they have to bring someone who does brand, or they remove the CMO title, and then you've got multiple different people trying to control it. If brands want to be thoughtful and they want to be more specific and they want to be more relevant, the more personalized you can become, the more that people will connect with you and want to engage with your content. So how I recommend in coaching and consulting or advising when people come to me, I always say, how do you want to show up? How do you want people to understand who you are, what you do? Yeah. And if something bad is coming down, like the M&S hack and all the other companies going for a hack, rather than just sending an email saying we're doing everything we can, that isn't helping put the customer's minds at ease. So yes, you can manage by press release and internal measures and getting goal set. Yeah. But actually, if you can come out and just say, hey, we're doing everything we can for you, for the internal customer, for the staff and the external customer, the better it will become. The more people will like it, resonate with it, and the more that they want to do that.
It really isn't that high bar to stand out from the crowd, and you're spot on. Like if their CEO just comes out with a quick video, it doesn't have to be highly produced. I mean, it's probably better if it's not highly produced. I phone up, hey everyone, listen, this is a bit of a shitstorm, and we get it. We know you're worried about your data. We're worried about it. Blah 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 blah. Trust us. That goes viral. And I'm not saying you should be doing everything to go viral, but you should learn something from the fact that would go viral, right? Rather than just a press release, like a boring vanilla, comes back to the same thing, right? It's just boring and vanilla. Like, how do you want to stand out? Do you want to stand out? I think people underestimate the power of engaging content. And I'll come back to what I said earlier. I think you see these independent creators creating huge communities and audiences. And I think there's a lot to be learned from brands. I'm kind of conscious we're still on your first question.
No, we've flirted with almost all of them, and I think this is the best style of conversation because we're trying to help people, diagnose the problem, understand it, and then make recommendations on how to improve it. And I think that's, unfortunately, when you read articles or you see video out, very often it's you're the problem, or it's diagnosed as you have to do more. Yeah. Whereas actually what we're saying is you can do less in lower quality to have higher results. And often when you go viral, it has this impact that people understand you, they want to connect with you, they'll have something to say, they have an opinion. And rather than blending in and being what I call a bland, not a brand, people will want to be want to be connected with you. They will want to be part of it, and they will want to show it. Like, I've worked at brands which have been the validation for them. They've been the blue tick, where because they're using your platform and you've decided to be a platform, it's doing a great job for them. They feel safe. They feel part of something bigger.
Yeah.
And our job is to make you as successful as possible and talk with you and help you to be successful, as opposed to just send you product nudges that just tell you to do more. That's not going to make you successful in that space.
Buy me.
Yeah, no, we've spoken about it numerous times. I have this my biggest bugbearer is what I call ask fatigue, ASK fatigue. It's where brands and companies come at you all the time and they're saying, give me more, we're doing a sale, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. And all you're doing is you're saying to a customer, we don't care about you, we just want your wallet. So if you can prove to be more than that transaction or transactions, people will buy into you and will want to be with you when they've got the opportunity to open a wallet. Most companies aren't going to be in a place to ask for something and a customer's going to open their wallet and go, oh, brilliant.
And so, you know, the easiest test of that is, and I'll ask you and anyone who's listening or watching can do this exercise as well, is like, how many emails do you get from brands that are a straight away open and read? And for me, I've been through the exercise recently where I've just unsubscribed from shed loads of emails. And there's a couple of brands who are from the same organization. They are the only brands I ever read, and that is Hyatt Denim and Do Lectures, who are both owned by David Hyatt and his wife. And the reason is because I find it interesting content, and they very occasionally will put in a piece of, but it's not an outright sales email. It's just good content. It's just interesting content. And I genuinely can't think off the top of my head of another brand that I could care less about what is in their email, or I think, that blows my mind. Honestly blows my mind, like how much is being spent on marketing and advertising and social media and the rest of it. And you've got, I can't think of one brand that I look forward to getting their emails. Isn't that crazy?
That's so telling, because what most people have decided, and it's a choice, and you choose to do it every year when you do your marketing strategy or your action plan, and you say the CRM budget is X, we're going to do Y by X date, and all that does is we're going to do it the same or slightly different. And people who unsubscribe, they unsubscribe, because what we're going to do is just send, on the Tuesday, we're going to send the trending topics, and on a Thursday, we're going to give you an offer, or we're going to give you something that other people have come up with. But yeah, the ask is there. Actually, what you could do is, get someone in, maybe Chris, to help you, and you say, hey, what we're actually looking for is to make CRM like an extension of our brand.
Yeah.
And what we want to be able to do is, we're going to put an ask in there because we're a business and that's what we're here to do. But we want to make it so it's engaging, that people look forward to something we're sending out.
But just sorry to interrupt, Danny. It's like, it's not just the ask, right? It's like you're giving something as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's you might have a newsletter with a list of 5 or 6 pieces of content you're sharing. One of them is an ask, and 5 or 6 of them is something interesting. Sorry to interrupt, but just to take it a step further, and this is a good exercise for people to do as well, is around employee advocacy on social media. And I love having this conversation because it doesn't half make people squirm. But it's like, how many, when brand XYZ puts out a piece of content, how many of their employees are either at worst liking it, at best sharing it? And it's very rare. It's so rare. For a normal everyday brand, it is rare. And that tells the same story, right? If people who are working there are even embarrassed, or maybe not embarrassed, but not proud to share the content, then there's got to be alarm bells ringing. And I tried to, a company I was working with a few years ago, I tried to introduce an employee advocacy program where we went out of our way to get people to share it. The CEO was writing to the whole company. It's like, look, we're changing the way we're doing our social. We would really love your support. Can you do your best to share it? And even then, nothing happened.
Yeah.
Says a lot, right?
I've worked somewhere and they used to send round an email with all the updates, like product updates, and it used to have a copy and paste or like click here to share it on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn used to have a platform that you do one click and it would share it to your audience. Obviously, that's not part of their engagement goals now, so that's sort of gone. But I do think where we've landed a lot of the time in marketing is the spray and pray approach, which is we're gonna put as many messages out there in as many ways, and kind of hope a little bit that it gets out. And the way I think we have to engineer it differently and be really smart about distribution is understanding now we're in a hyper personalized world where most of the platforms we spend most of the time in gives us the content that we'd most likely want to consume. So I think there's the one-to-one audience. It's how do I entertain or engage or intrigue one of our users? It's one to few. So these are the small cohorts who are going to love this style of content. How do we get it to them and how do we want them to engage? There's one to many or one to a group, which is slightly more mainstream, a little bit more entertaining possibly, or giving you something, like a tip or a recipe that makes you want to come together and do it. And then very rarely should you send an email to everyone, your whole database anymore. And even when it comes down to, if you really think about it, most of them feel like it's one to everyone. It's not actually from someone to someone else with something.
That's a strategy conversation, right? Because I agree with you 100%. I think, but I think that is still going on, right? It's just a upload piece of content, whatever it might be, send to all. But I think something we were talking about the other day, actually, and you said we were talking about how even just once someone's bought a product, is having that separate email flow where it might be a thank you for buying it, followed up by some instructions on how to use it or whatever. And then, even after that, it might be like, if you, here's some FAQs that normally get around this product. I can't remember what we were talking about. We were talking about returns, I think, or it might, and then the follow up is like, hope, and once you've done that process, people are kind of almost expecting or happy to see you in their inbox. Is then you send the ask. I mean, how many times do we get asked for reviews or feedback without sort of being taken on a first date first, right? It's like just if you go through that process, you get less returns, you get more engagement, but then you might actually get a better review. I think just this kind of all this stuff is like, I think people get a bit consumed with what content is and actually how much it might cost. But just a change in the email flow like that, it doesn't really take a lot of time, or it shouldn't.
In this world that we're in at the moment, if I was like my Jama, I used this example a few years ago. My Jama sells face masks.
Okay.
And it's like a beauty product. It's like a vanity product. And you can buy it direct, like a D2C. You can buy it direct from her. You'll then get the standard flow. What you could do, and it'd be really easy because there's so much content of her, and she wouldn't have to read out everyone's possible names. It wouldn't have to do the Coca-Cola style approach of the most popular 100 names.
Yeah.
But you could use, not to jump on the AI bandwagon, but you could do it so it says, thanks for ordering this, Dave. Dave, here's some great ways other people are using it and have had great successes. If you want to take a picture, you can, or here's other people using it. Thanks again, blah, 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 right? So it's really simple, really easy, direct to you.
Yeah.
And then you could follow up and say, hey, because what most people do in that situation is they're probably buying it again. So then you could say, you could know they're a repeat user and say, hey, here's what other people are doing.
Is it a product that you buy repeatedly?
Yeah, it's basically an eye mask that you put on and it helps you with bags. Here's what I think brands could be doing, and smaller brands are going to take the opportunity where larger ones won't. And it is the whole, oil tanker. It's slow to turn an oil tanker around.
Mm-hmm.
But I firmly believe that if you're a big brand and you're constantly thinking like one and operating like one, it doesn't take too long anymore to be disrupted by someone who understands what their customer wants, understands what the customer needs, and how they're connecting at a deeper level. So the MyJama example is really simple, and you can apply it to multiple others. Yep. Lemonade, which was a US product, you only could order through SMS.
Okay.
And now that you can have like a full conversation if you wanted to with them. So there are unique and interesting ways that you can buy products. But if you buy it on that medium, you can then have conversations on that medium. So you've already been invited in a smart way to do it. And something I think that if I was to give away some top tips would be to really think around how you can connect with your customers at a deeper level through some of the content you've either already created or ways you can create something at scale at low cost to make them understand that you've really thought about them. Yep. And in hard times with money and different situations that you might go in. So when you send a payday email, there's a lot of people that are out of work. So actually that payday email could probably offend people. Obviously people get offended by all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But are there ways that you can rethink the stuff that you've done over and over again that might help you create a different schedule or a different flow of information? So whether that's on your email and your thank you page when you've ordered to the CRM, automated CRM that you receive, to then on social media, because otherwise what you're going to be doing is reacquiring that customer and spending more and more money to get them to come back, as opposed to actually retaining and having a lot lower churn for something that people will naturally want to keep coming back to you over and over again for.
I think that weirdly it comes back to something you said earlier about people being aware of what others do. I love collecting funnel flows from creators online. I love signing up to stuff just to see what they're doing or how they're going about it. And some of these are very smallish brands, but you can tell the amount of thought and effort that's gone into this chain of emails or social comments or whatever it is. And it's funny how many people I speak to who don't do that, who particularly work in marketing. And I don't know if that comes back to what we were saying earlier about these people who are not living on is probably the wrong word, but like consuming TikTok content or Instagram or YouTube or wherever. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there, in line basically with what you're saying, right? There's so many things to take away from people who are doing it and actually are very agile. Because you can change this. I mean, it's that oil tanker thing you said, right? The amount of times I've worked with companies that are like, I was like, you could change the wording in this email or this landing page or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, well, we need to we'll get a copywriter in and then we'll run that through legal and then we'll run it through compliance and then we'll run it through brand. And it takes 2 weeks to change a paragraph. Whereas a lot of these smaller brands can move quickly and can change content and can come from ideation to having something live within an hour.
In my previous chat with Kyle, he said it's amazing how many people can't update a website still.
Yeah.
And then I said it's amazing how people can't update a homepage or landing pages, yet can be let loose on social media and say whatever they want in whatever format, whether they're leaving a company or what have you. So it's something that I've struggled with, having led product side as well, which is if it does take a long time to get signed off, it can also take a tremendously long time for it then to actually appear on anything on any of your platforms or profiles or websites.
But that comes back to what we were saying earlier, right? And then when it does take a long time, people just think, oh, what's the point? And then won't suggest it because they just can't be bothered to have to go to the boss and say, can we do this? And then no, it's going to take 2 weeks. It's a shame, really.
We're in this place now where AI gives the ambitious goal that we could do anything we want as quickly as we want with as little time and effort as we sort of want. I'm suggesting to clients and potential clients that you have to go quality over quantity. You can't dive in and just create. Yeah, you should look at the quality interactions, the quality content that you're creating. And something that I think will land in the future is there's going to be so much that's hitting our feeds and our inboxes, and the way that we decide to hear from our friends, our family, and the companies that we're connected with. That actually a lot of it is going to be so much AI slop, and Pinterest have already struggled with this. Is there's this huge There'd be a huge demand to go all in on AI, and the AI just let loose, or looser than we've ever been able to. Do you think that AI is a gift, or do you think it's going to be a curse for a lot of brands and CMOs and companies?
I think it's ironic that we're saying, or you're saying, that AI can push out more content, and actually kind of goes against the guardrails thing. It's almost like we'll let AI put out, but we won't let our teams put out stuff. Is it a gift or a curse? I think it all depends upon the person using it, right? And it's cliche as anything, but in my mind, I use it as a tool. And if you've got someone using the tool who doesn't know how to use it, then it's a curse. And if you've got someone who knows how to use it, it's a gift. I think, again, my thought process is we're going from a period of vanillaness and blandness to we'll go to a period of everything's AI. And weirdly, we'll just create the same generic where everything's vanilla, everything being AI, it will have the same impact, right? And the answer is the same for that. I think if you want to stand out, I think that actually, not being totally AI driven will benefit you. I was listening to this business podcast a little while ago, and they were talking about opportunities in the business world. And the host was saying that he thinks that there's a huge opportunity for people creating businesses that are non-tech. So like retreats where people will go to, it's got no electricity or no phone signal, or, it's just going back to farming or horse riding. And actually he said he thinks there's going to be a big boom in people who are trying to look for opportunities in life to go and digital detox or tech detox for. And I think it's the same for AI. I think that I use it every day, but I don't rely on it to output content for me. I use it as a personal assistant. I use it as, if I need clarity on something, I'll let it help me, especially in this day and age, right? I mostly work on my own in my little pod here. And, when in the old days, when you and I were working, we were in offices, right? And you had people to bounce ideas. That's the way I look at AI at the moment, is someone to bounce ideas around. I think if everyone starts using it to create stuff and to put content out, I don't see it as any different as hiring a cheap copywriter. You're still going to get crap landing pages, right? You're still going to get crap email. And I think that there are total pros to it. And I do love it. But I'm learning every day how to make my outputs better. But I don't think it will get to a point where I'm just laying in bed and AI is creating videos of me talking about XYZ. I could be totally wrong. A little bit of me hopes for humanity and society's sake that it doesn't go that way.
The pressure is going to be on the companies who have got headcount pressures.
Yes, that's exactly what I was just going to say. It comes down to money for a lot, I think.
And the battle will be, there's a balance between quality and quantity. We're gonna let AI decide, which some brands are doing already, rightly or wrongly. There are going to be AI creators. There are virtual influencers already that have that, and they've been investigated, and they're already seeing like an over influence that they have on people. And AI bots are going to be something that everyone dives into fairly soon.
That's first adopters, right? I mean, that'll soon, if everyone starts doing it, that'll dilute very quickly.
Yeah, but most don't understand how to prompt, and they're not sure how to test or set test environments. what most will end up doing is kind of either letting it loose, or it just become this over optimized, very same cookie cutter approach.
Yeah.
It has worked for, because the way we know with trends now, they don't last a week anymore. They last literally 4 hours.
Yeah.
And they don't even really make a dent anymore. So where I think we're going to get to is the most senior marketing or growth person is going to have to say, here is the line, and here is how we're going to be different, and here's where AI can be our collaborator or our editor.
Yeah.
But actually, for taste purposes, for brand purposes, for success purposes, we are going to adopt it for 1, 2, 3 reasons, and this is how we distribute. And maybe you're going to let AI distribute it in different ways, whether that's cutting up the audio or video and sending it out, or it's a way to work out to the top 100 customers how to send thank you messages to them.
So there's 2 things I want to talk about. One was, so I read your email this morning, the Marketing Unfiltered email, and I thought it was a really good read about how people were approaching what was pure SEO to now AI. And then further to what you were saying, I guess AI is only getting better and better every week, right? Every update that comes is getting better. And, you know, if me and you have this conversation in a month's time, 6 months' time, a year's time, what AI can do and how it can do it is going to be, it'll probably be night and day different from what it is now. And I suspect what will happen is it's going to come down to money ultimately, right? You've said about headcount. You know, someone's probably sitting there, they've got a team of 3 copywriters who are churning out blog content or social content or whatever it might be. When theoretically you get rid of those 3 people and just sign up to, you know, whatever for 20 quid a month. That's my biggest fear, is brands just start cost cutting and using AI to cost cut, because I think it takes away something from what's being put out. But unfortunately, as it gets better and better, the tone of voice, the brand messaging, the way that CMO or CEO wants the content to come out, like the AI will learn it and learn it and learn it to the point where it's almost perfect. And I don't think I don't. So you asked me, is it a blessing or a curse? Like, it depends how you want me to argue it. I could argue it either way. It's a blessing if you're trying to cut costs and you need to put out more content. You know, you need to optimize your emails or blog pages, landing pages. It can do that for you quickly and cheaply. Is it a curse because actually it's taking jobs away and it's taking that humanization away, and we're going to be living in a world in 3 years, 5 years time where all we are consuming is AI content? That worries me a little bit, but ultimately I see it as a tool, and I see it as people who know how to use it well will do well with it. And the people who don't, you'll end up with the same vanilla blandness that actually is kind of live now.
Yeah, there's so many unique things that you can leverage from internal data that actually no one else is going to have, or there's all these insights that you're going to have, and lanes that you can create away from letting and enabling tools to do it. But everything's going to end with AI. It's either going to end up in either like an assistant or a co-creator, or it's going to be baked into tools and you let it do it. Whether you get really deep in MCPs and stuff like that now, which, you know, is
you could create an agent, right, that hooks up to your analytics and that's looking for trends. It's looking, and you know, so even that sort of owned data that you have, where you can create a narrative and a story out of it that no one else can create, you can still have an AI do that for you. And then that's one thing I talk about a lot with a lot of clients, is like, what stories can only you tell? And that could be trends that you have. It could be data that only you've got. And that's important because that's your moat, right? No one can pinch that. But I mean, I don't really know. My AI knowledge is, I'm not a dev, I'm not a coder, but even I can build a pretty basic agent. So you get someone who really knows what they're doing. Like our mate Phil, he's doing loads of AI automation for companies at the moment. and you get someone with his sort of knowledge and capabilities, and yeah, it's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, obviously I've gone deep for the last since the turn of the year really on it, and I see it evolving in a way that is brilliant and inspiring, and then I see how people have or haven't looked at it, and it worries me a little bit then when people haven't and say they're too old for it, which worries me.
Yeah.
And then I've seen other people dive so far in it they don't understand how to get out of it. So I think with it, like you said, it's gonna evolve.
I was going to say I did an AI workshop for a content team a couple of weeks ago, and it was exactly that. Like the people who were in the team, there's some of them are using it every day for all sorts of things. Some of them didn't want to touch it because of the environmental impacts and the political impacts and all this sort of stuff.
We haven't gone into enough is probably the user generated content, UGC, versus the EGC, the employee generated content. And throughout the conversation, we've kind of flirted with employee generated content, or, something that's really valuable. Where do you stand? And do you have like a guide that can help people understand the most useful way of tackling both?
Okay, so I am 100% of the belief that UGC and EGC are so underutilized that it's almost criminal. I think they both bring different things to the party. And I also think, I mean, even I include influencer stuff as well, so IGC as well. So I talk to companies about those three. IGC, I think, is an interesting angle, and I think a lot of people are doing influencer stuff. I won't go on too much about it, but I think people are trying to shape what the influencer says too much. Whereas what I always try and explain to people is like these influencers or creators have built up their audience knowing exactly how to do that. And if you start trying to inject too much corporate talk in there, it turns off the audience. The audience know they've sold out, and I think then you end up with poor returns, poor conversions, whatever. I think with influencers, you have to work better and smarter and let them almost drive the creative as much as comes back to guardrails. User generated content. I'm working with a mental health app at the moment who are trying to include more user generated stuff. And I think user generated stuff is powerful if done the right way. I think a lot of brands, again, try and sway too much what the users say and end up with this kind of convoluted thing that actually doesn't really do anything. Whereas it's tough because you want it to be good content, but if you interfere too much, then the user, it doesn't really work. So where I've done stuff before is like we basically sent out a message, right? Who would you like to provide us with some content that we can put on socials? And we've negotiated either product or money or whatever and usage rights and the whole 9 yards. But then from that, we give them a template that says, this is kind of the structure you should follow, right? It should be a good hook. And then we give them some frameworks around like what they're trying to say and how it fits better into, and there's like call to action. UGC, if done right, is powerful because people want to buy what other people are suggesting, right? It's like, Danny, like if I said to you, oh, you should check out this product, the chances of you buying that product are exponentially higher than if the brand themselves come and go, hey, Danny, we've been emailing you, you should buy our product. You're like, yeah, whatever. If you've got someone you trust, it's not always the way for users, but it's a lot more likely that they're going to get like-minded people, or we're both middle-aged white guys, right? If you see someone from another middle-aged white guy talking about the benefits of this Jama eye mask for your bags under your eyes, you're more likely to buy it. I won't say too much more about UGC because I think it's kind of people know the benefits. I just think my last thing is just make sure you do it right. Otherwise, it's just a waste of everybody's time. Employee generated content, I think, is arguably one of the biggest untapped resources in content. And I think that people, we briefly touched on it earlier, people want to hear from people, right? They want to hear from They want to know, and it comes back to the same thing with UGC. You have to be careful what you're communicating. If it comes across too salesy, then, you're getting nowhere. But if you can provide that behind the scenes look at the company or the product or the service or whatever it is, I think people relate to that really strongly. And I think that if you can find, people communicating messages on a regular basis, people look forward to hearing from them. And I think that you said about earlier about the woman who sent out the emails, people bond to them, right? They become, they look forward to seeing that name in their inbox or on their social feeds. And it comes back to Guardrails conversation. And a lot of companies I speak to have this fear about employee generate content. And it's always the same thing, right? Oh, well, what if I let Jessica go and put out all this content? Then she's going to get poached by a competitor. Honestly, I hear it every time it gets discussed. And I say the same thing, like, if it's the same as, anyone, like everyone's on LinkedIn these days, if your company starts doing well and you're looking for a new head of product, you Google your competitor, you see who their head of product is. It's not a new thing. So to have that as your excuse of not doing it is crazy. I think the reach that employees can get on platforms, particularly LinkedIn, is 100,000x anything you're going to get on a company page. It can be amazing if done well.
Here's something that I think a lot of people don't really understand the difference. Some do, some don't. But creators have an audience, and they are the people who create content, who understand what great content looks like, what good content works with the audience, and they're not just grab a product, say the lingo they sent, and sort of just post a video. That's an influencer. And they influence people by saying they do X, Y, or Z, and that isn't something that's it's not easy because people can't create a big audience really quickly. But they are very different. And then when people say B2B influencers, there are some, but what most people are getting confused with is KOLs, like key opinion leaders, actual experts who come in and have an opinion or can talk with high authority, high agency on really complex and complicated topics. Mm-hmm. I think what we're seeing at the moment is people misunderstanding what they need and when. Yeah. And having worked all the different sides, agency, in-house, to brand side, and having been part of a few campaigns, one with PepsiCo many years ago, you either see a brief that is so specific, makes you feel a little bit sick and you don't want to be part of it anymore, regardless of how much they do or don't pay. And, some people will contact you to be a key opinion leader. That's much more, that's a really important distinction. I just think people, A, need to understand it, and B, when you talk to key opinion leaders, you kind of have to think of the creators as that as well, as in they're the key opinion leader in their space with their audience. So give them what you want them to give them the guardrails and help them be successful, because you're not going to tell someone who has spent their life in science what to say in an interview. You'll give them a cheat sheet, but they're there to give, authentic, authorized content, tell them their opinion. So I think people should understand the difference.
No, I agree. You've stumbled upon something I thought we were going to talk about a bit later, but I think one of the big opportunities out there is creators as opposed to influencers. Said look at it the wrong way. They're like, oh, influencer X has got 100,000 followers. Whereas there's creators out there who are very niche, who might not have a huge audience, but they are very talented at creating content. And you might argue, and we could argue it differently, they might argue, oh, well, if they were that good, they'd have a big audience. But it doesn't always work like that, right? And I think that there's a huge opportunity for brands to look at smaller creators. And it's sort of lined with something you said earlier about, would you be prepared to put paid spend behind something? And I've kind of, one of my Notion folders, I've got this thing about creators, hiring creators, not influencers, and hiring creators to say, look, can you help us create a piece of content about this? And allowing them to go off and work out what that might look like. because I've seen it a few times now where you could basically then use that creator's content on your own socials. And it's not because you're trying to tap into their audience as an influencer campaign. You're actually asking someone to create a specific piece of engaging and interesting and good content. And I think that brands who look at that are going to find that's a really good opportunity, because Danny, we're talking about like this, some of these, you and I are a bit older now, but there's some of these people like sub 30 who have lived total digital natives, who have grown up on iPhones, have grown up on Premiere Pro and After Effects and Photoshop and all this, and can create stunning content these days. And I think if you start looking at opportunities where you can get a creator to make you something rather than an influencer to shoehorn your brand in something they're already doing, I think you might end up seeing some really powerful returns.
Completely agree. And the more that we realize that we have such a variety of options and we can put them into really smart buckets where we use them for different outputs, different goals, and they actually become talent. So they become part of you. The amount of brands that end up hiring celebrities as chief content officer or chief creative or editorial, right? It just shows you the investment that they make, whether it's for PR or actually that they are hands-on, which most of them seem to be. I think it's really important. One thing I was going to call out there is the more we're going to get into it where brands can self-serve and they can go on these platforms and create episodic content that actually they're going to want to be on. They might not get a Netflix deal or they might not get a Channel 4 deal, but they could go out and they could produce good content, high quality content that put out on YouTube, which people will want to see. And then they can leverage creators, influencers that be part of the journey, part of the package. They can have employee generated content. That's something that they can use for years for recruitment. And then customers and consumers will want to buy into the one person that's really quirky or says something that becomes a meme. I think these are all different areas where we're going to see, and we've seen it with, Netflix picking up a WhatsApp documentary. We're seeing it more and more on brands that are deciding to be a little bit more involved with product placement in like a Mr. Beast video or an equivalent. So I think here, where I would recommend people to start looking at is if you really want to go down the media first route and be really smart, you've got so many options as opposed to wait months and months for something to come out. If you've got an in-house agency or you're looking to roll something out, here are ways that you can do it really smartly, control some of the messaging, also have inbuilt advertising, inbuilt marketing, inbuilt distribution, and have ways that you can create short, mid, and long-term content that really resonates with people. And you've seen that with a load of the fashion brands that created all these content that were on Channel 4, Channel 5, etc., and Greg's documentaries. All of these brands, you can create episodic content now for next to nothing, and it really resonates with people.
Two things I just come to mind as you saying that. One is you said about recruitment, and I think that's something that shouldn't be overlooked. Like if you are a brand that is known for trying to put out interesting content, you will find it a lot easier to recruit, and you will recruit the right kind of. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you'll end up recruiting people who want to come to you because you're creating this great content, and they themselves can help you make even better content, and it will snowball into even better content. But it's not just about picking up business. I think you will pick up people who want to work for you. And on that note, my second point is, can we as a society stop underpaying content creatives? Beggars belief how much I see it all the time on LinkedIn, because I look at this sort of stuff for a content creator, £10 an hour, or social media person, we want you to create this like 18 grand a year. I get it that times are tough at the moment, but that is not the way to get the people you want in who are really going to be able to make a difference.
And you go back to that cycle of hire, fire, hire, fire, hire,
100%,
fire.
Yeah. It's a waste of money, basically, in the end.
Exactly. Should we do a quick fire round?
Go for it, mate. Go for it.
What are one or two formats that that you know are underappreciated?
Employee generated content. CRM is a gold mine that so few brands utilize well. I think micro influencers as opposed to influencers. I think there's a lot of people out there who have small followings, but actually create interesting content that can be. A previous company, we used to get these finance-based creators. They didn't have many big audience, but the audience they had was hyper engaged. And especially now in the world we're living in, where actually follower count doesn't quite matter so much, I think that too many brands are still using it as a metric. When actually, if you look at the number of views they're getting on some stuff compared to their follower count, I think there's a big opportunity. Go on.
Couldn't agree more. The one, if people want to go and have a look at an example of this, is how Microsoft have just rolled out their Copilot advertising, like through influencers. They've been really thoughtful on people who can create 60-second videos that are going to sell their product in Copilot, and all their features much better than they could put out a 25-minute video or release a book.
I've not seen that. So what, they've gone out to their audience to get creators in?
Yeah, so they've reached out to Excel directory. They've reached out to people who are Microsoft influencers who talk around Office and pivot tables and stuff like that. And they've reached out to them, and they've created content so they can show the new Copilot. Like in a table, you can click the Copilot logo, and then you can ask it any question, and it creates the answer for you. Okay. So it does all the pivot tables, X lookups, all of that for you. And people have been able to, these micro influencers and, let's call them mid-tier influencers, can really explain the product so much better than like an actor could, because they use it, they show it, and you can see how excited they are because it just makes their job easier.
I haven't seen that. I'll have a look at that.
That's a prime example of how you can be really smart around understanding who can explain your product better than you can, who can demo it, and how they can distribute it in the right way.
Yeah.
So one thing that we talked around earlier, so do you think live still has a place in today's landscape? So Instagram, TikTok, etc.
It's kind of a running theme of this whole podcast. It's like, do you want to stand out? And when I originally thought about this question, I was like, well, probably not. But actually, if we are sticking to the do you want to stand out themes, like how many brands do lives? And the answer is not many. So if you want to stand out, I think you should. I think, why not? I mean, again, it comes back to the guardrails. It comes back to the people in your teams do they want to? But I think there's a lot of value in, say, the head of product talking about, there might have been a release this week, so you could do a live. It comes back to the Copilot example, right? It's like, how can you talk to your community? How can you talk to your potential customers, audience? I think that there is potential. Yeah. I think lives could be done well, and I get that there's a fear there. I think lives would be good. However, if there's a fear there that people don't necessarily want to commit to going live, then you could replicate the live experience, right? You could say, look, we've got our head of product, we've got our head of customer service, we've got our CEO, our COO, whatever it is, and you could put out, it's just another way of communicating, like give us your question that you want them to answer. So you could create the similar sort of live impact, but actually do it a delay, or you could
delayed live, as I call it. Yeah. If you're a brand and you want to feel authentic, but you're really excited about something and you're not doing TikTok shop, like you can definitely go live. You can definitely build rapport with individuals, and like again leans on employee generated content. You can really have stars that stand out on their, what I call their platform, their performance. Like they have a platform to perform to. They have a wider audience. And
people want to hear from people, right? They want the brands to have a little bit of soul, that actually, they're all faceless corporations. So if you can be that non-faceless corporation. You can have a bit of personality in your or allow your CTO to have that little personality, the quirks that you like about them and why you've hired them, and actually they can resonate with the other, your typical client. Then yeah, it could be really powerful.
The really good example of this is what OpenAI have seemed to enabled a little bit. So
Okay.
rather than Sam Altman being the front and center, which I can only imagine he loves, he's great at it, but I can only imagine that's one of his favorite parts of his job.
Okay.
But they're putting out the OpenAI researchers, so the people that are working on it, creating logic and reasoning and doing all the modeling. They're going on podcasts, they're doing like live interviews, and they're so relatable. Although they're highly intelligent, so they're not PR trained, which is actually a benefit to them.
Yeah.
They can come out and they can tell them they can give you secrets. So they can say, actually, don't just prompt once, prompt multiple times, because you'll get better and better answers, and you can decide which is a great example. And you find all these hidden gems that you're never going to get because they're not going to have the opportunity to talk in front of people. So
Okay, so let me ask you a question then. So I think we both agreed that people should be speaking for companies more. Is it just a trust thing? Like, why is it that more people aren't doing it, in your opinion?
history, because it isn't really done. I think there's like muscle memory where you just default into what you know, as opposed to and really being thoughtful and having first, second, and third order effects and understanding that you can do it differently and you should, and what can be optimized and or cured, do it. If it, do a keep, kill, cure, copy exercise. Keep it if it's working well. If it can be cured and optimize it. If it isn't going to work and won't work, kill it. But actually, there are other opportunities where other people are doing it in a great way. Copy it, like replicate it, and do it that way. So I think it's history, muscle memory, and then confidence. And with the pressures of delivery on, delivering on results straight away, if you can't draw an A to B line or an A to Z line on it with attribution, it's very difficult. However, almost everything that you do can be attributed. And also when you think of it, and because the funnel does exist, whether you believe it or not, the funnel does exist. So each different channel has different opportunities, and now you can reuse content, recycle it, put it in different areas. So actually, it's for you to distribute better, to be smarter at it, and understand how to do it differently. And if you don't want to, there'll be hundreds of people who are happy to come in and take on your role to do it. So unfortunately, for some it will work out and they don't want to do it. For others, it will be, let's just go and do it.
Yeah.
So why does brand content still suck?
It's boring, isn't it? I mean, it's I think there's so much. I mean, we've talked about it. I guess like it's vanilla. It doesn't stand out. It's not taking any chances. It's too worried about perception. It's too worried about. There's just a fear there, I think, that actually and it comes back to the same thing I've been saying. I think it doesn't take a lot to stand out. And I think that there's too many teams who have got different reasons. Maybe they can't work together. So maybe it's the social team, the brand team, the SEO team, and actually they're not sort of working together to create content that actually suits everybody. I honestly don't know. I think that this comes back to that Duolingo example, right? There's companies out there that have taken the chance on it. Paddy Power, another good example. They've taken the chance on it. And then there's a million other companies who haven't, and they're just a bit scared of trying something new, not getting the results that they want or need. Coming back to the 10-year thing, right? I mean, are people scared to suggest something new because they don't want it to backfire and then, be out of a job? Do they just want the safe bet? And the safe bet is spending £1 and getting £1.50 back, and as opposed to going to your CEO and saying, look, I need 100 grand, and you're not going to see any return from it. possibly ever, or at least for 6 months. It's just, I think that there's, I mean, you know more CMOs than I do, but I think a lot of them are not probably to take the big gambles at the moment because of job security. I could be wrong with that thought process, but
I don't think you're off there. One thing I say to a lot of people who are looking for coaching, and we do in pre-calls, I say, are you the leader? So do you own it, co-own it, or you're a collaborator on it? If you're a department lead, you're a leader, you should lead on it.
yeah,
And it's on you and your department to prove it right or wrong and understand, actually, do we push it harder? Do we do more or less? Or is it actually that was an experiment and we can't do it again? But it is complemented in many different spaces.
yeah,
If you feel yourself as a collaborator or co-owner, then you're probably not doing yourself or your team a real justice in what you're trying to achieve.
yeah.
Do you think there are any quick wins for marketing leaders that can just move forward and take on our podcast and say, hey, here are some really good things that you could do?
Yeah, I probably do actually. I think, like, from a low lift example, we talked about CRM, we talked about landing pages, we talked about sign up flows and the rest of it. I wonder how many people listening to this have looked at their landing page in the last 6 months or a year or 5 years, or have looked at the email sign up or whatever, you know, or implemented new tools. I mean, for instance, Instagram, ManyChat, right? It's a very Marmite topic. Some people love it, some people hate it. And I think there's probably a level of snobbery around marketers who are probably like, yeah, I'm not sure about that. But you see creators using it all the time and growing their audiences on the back of it with target customers, right? I think that so quick wins was the question. I would look at CRM as a starting place for all content. I think you're not competing with anyone, right? You're going straight into an inbox. If you can start creating engaging content in there that is not adding to the ask fatigue, I think that's a no-brainer, right? Whether it's just changing the way you go about it, not making it a sales email every email, just talking to your customers. That could be anything, right? You could ask them questions. You could ask them, like, we would like your opinion on how we can make our product better, our service better, whatever. Or, could you give some honest feedback? Just start it to be an engaging process rather than buy this, buy this, buy this. We talked about it briefly earlier, like the follow up after buying a product. I think there's a gaping opportunity there, like to engage with people more. And it comes back to, that's the word, right? Engage rather than anything. Can you send them a video from the head of customer service going, especially there'll be some products and services out there where you get a lot of returns. And we talked about this, like where people might not understand it fully. It might be a complex product. So you might get your head of customer service go, right, hey, I'm Frankie, I'm head of customer service. We know that this is a complex product, again, owning it. And we hear these problems all over again. So we're going to nip it in the bud now, and we're going to tell you how to solve this. It could be the head of product going, these are the 3 things you should do to set up your thing, right? It creates that opening, that communication that's not just one-way traffic or just selling. Yeah, there's a few. Again, with social, is again, just remove all the social stuff, all the selling stuff from your social to begin with. I'm not about paid social. Like, if you want to do paid ads, fine. But I think if you can build a community, you can feel like you're talking to your audience rather than just at them. We introduced careful how I phrase this. We introduced a Facebook group at a former company of mine, and it was incredible. The engagement on it was incredible. Like, people were, like, we talk about word of mouth. People were communicating with each other. We spent a long time working out how to create rules around it about what people could and couldn't say. But when we introduced it, people were chatting to each other, and they were telling each other about when new products were released and when new initiatives were put out. And I think it had about 10,000 members at one point. And this was, I mean, I haven't looked at Facebook groups in a while, but this was when, you put out a Facebook group post and everyone in the group would see it. And it drove so much revenue. It was unbelievable. And for some reason, it's not going. I looked at it the other day. It's not going anymore. But yeah, I think there's loads of quick wins. I think people get obsessed about content and think they need to be creating cinematic YouTube videos or get like cinematic TikToks or whatever. And I think that there's ways you can get in before that actually can drive a lot of conversions or retention or whatever.
Yeah, my rule of thumb for brands really is video can be a slightly lower quality than you think it can be.
Yeah.
And actually, it doesn't have to be the best of the best. It can be, like you said, slightly shaky on an iPhone or on a tripod.
One might argue, Danny, that that's a better way to do it, right? It's not overproduced and it's not looking, because that has that level of authenticity that resonates a little bit better.
Yeah, and then I say with audio, you should go up.
Yes.
Increase your expectations. Get a mic. Get mics above you and whatever. And actually, your audio quality is really high. So if you're putting out audio content or visual plus audio, definitely have good mics because they're worth the investment.
Danny, they're not even that much of an investment these days, right? I mean, you can get very solid mics for 20 quid, and even getting, I mean, I've got a Shure mic. I'm pretty sure that's only like 100 quid or something. And it's studio quality. Like it's you're right. It's a no-brainer investment really, because it doesn't actually cost that much money.
Exactly. So I think if we were to wrap up, I've got some tips that we've talked upon over and over. So I think it'd be good to summarize. And if I've missed any, definitely jump in. So distribution, think first before, like it might even be the way for you to think about how to generate content and actually think about where content actually should live.
Yeah.
And then think about how you create the content for that channel, whether that would be, live, whether it be delayed live, or it would be something that could even be an image or a GIF. Don't overlook GIFs because they're still super powerful, especially in email.
Yeah.
High quality audio first, I think, is really important.
Just sorry, Danny, just to interrupt, going back to that distribution first thinking. So many people, brands will create one piece of content and their strategy is right, upload that to Facebook, upload it to TikTok, upload it to Instagram, upload it to YouTube, upload it to, like, it doesn't quite work like that, right? As you well know, the different audiences on different platforms expect different things. So I think what you said is 100% spot on. You should think about that side of things. Otherwise, it's almost a bit of a waste of time.
100%. High quality audio is going to be essential. There's going to be far more audio platforms coming out, as in through AI and having natural conversation. So I think that's going to be really important to plan for, but B, get in front first, especially with chatbots and agentic coming. That's going to be super critical. I think actually number 3 would be learning storytelling. So more than just hook and authentic, understand the problem you're trying to create or solve. Think around the hook that you're getting people to buy into, or the person that might be the hook. Think around how authentic it is and how good a quality needs to be. Obviously, it should be good enough for people to want to be connected to. Something that we touched upon and flirted with, but we didn't say most specifically, was the sweet spot right now might actually be mid-form content to be created, not short form, not 60 seconds or less, and not super long. Actually, mid-form might be the way for you to gain cut through, create your characters and people to buy into enough. And I continuously say this to people that talk to me, coaching, consultant, advising, go mid-form, because that's underdeveloped and will go across multiple different platforms. And create content where it will live natively. So can it be a short video? Can it be an image? Could it be an infographic? All these things that are circular will come back. Can you create something that will be on it? As we said, when you rejig CRM, can you add an image into it? Can you create a video for it? Is it something that can just be, a 10-second looping GIF that tells them the steps to take? Easy to learn the product, easy to use it, then it's easy to want to share it, and then easy to personalize. So people will really land with it and understand what you're trying to get through. And then I think the overarching thing is number 6, and probably the biggest takeaway for people, is brands, you're going to have to take a punt and being a little bit more creative and understand and be the leader and saying, here's what we're doing, why we're doing it.
Yep.
Let the team work out how, and then your job is to say the why and understand and map out the success and the performance metrics.
Yep.
And then report on it and educate.
Yeah, I agree. I think the golden rule is if you can stand out in this sea of, I mean, like we've never seen more content, right? Ever. And we're getting used to just scrolling. I think if you can stand out in that sea of content, I think it'd be really powerful. And I think it's almost what us consumers are craving, is content that actually makes us want to consume it, rather than just this like dystopian zombification of just scrolling through things, right? I think we want stuff to buy into. We want people to tell us stories. We want interesting things. And I think if you can stand out and do that, I think the world's your oyster.
And just a last sort of take is we're consuming content on completely different devices. If YouTube is consumed on TV as it's one of the most used platforms, think about how when you're creating content, what device it's going to be understood on and consumed on, and then what the actions they might take.
Yeah.
So whether people are streaming, whether they're shopping, whether they're scrolling or subscribing, or whether they're actually understanding that they can go and then shop, think about it in those different areas. And I think we'll be on to a winner.
Future's bright for content, Danny.
Definitely. Chris, where should people find you, reach out to you, and be useful to you?
LinkedIn, I guess, is probably the easiest place. Chris Hutchings, and my consultancy is called It Better Go Bang.
Great name. Thanks very much, Chris.
Cheers, Danny. Appreciate it, mate.